In the 80 or so years that he's been around, Batman has fought practically everybody. From the Joker to Mr. Freeze, Superman, the Predator, the Shredder, Jack the Ripper, zombies, pirates, cowboys, Fortnite players, vampires, aliens, his own children. But he also fought against cosmic horror, and he did it in style. That's right, Batman fought Cthulhu in the 2001 miniseries, The Doom That Came to Gotham. Written by Mike Mignola and Richard Pace, and illustrated by Troy Nixey, Dennis Jake, and Dave Stewart, The Doom That Came to Gotham is a very unique Batman horror mystery story set in the 1920s, and takes a lot of inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, except the racism. The comic, while similar in some ways to Gotham by Gaslight, is awesome, and definitely fills the niche of a cosmic horror Batman story. And recently, a full-length animated movie based on the comic was released. So today, I wanted to dive into the story of The Doom That Came to Gotham, and compare the book to the movie to see what format the story fits into better. So with all of that being said, let's get into it. The story starts off with Bruce Wayne and his Robins searching for a missing expedition in the Antarctic, which obviously takes inspiration from the Mountains of Madness, one of Lovecraft's most popular stories. Bruce needs people to be attached to in this story, so his crew is made up of all of the previous Robins, which is pretty neat. In the movie, they even switch out Tim Drake for Cassandra Cain. As they continue to investigate, Bruce finds his way into a cave with the Penguin and Mr. Freeze, who have clearly lost their minds. Penguin might as well be, well, a penguin, and Freeze is mining away at the ice to try and unleash some strange being. And it's here that we come to a possible point of contention for some people. This Batman uses guns and seems to not have much issue with killing. Now, the gun thing could be explained by the fact that the Waynes were killed by a knife in this universe, but that doesn't seem very concrete to me, and I guess he doesn't go out of his way to kill, but it's not like he avoids it either. I think because this is a different Batman and changes were made to complement the story, it's fine, but it's definitely a stretch from the norm. I think the movie handles this better. He doesn't use guns and feels more like your typical caped crusader, but either way, you get past it pretty quick. Anyway, Bruce takes Freeze, who had interacted with the creature in the ice, back to the boat, and after hearing some strange prophecy about the lurker on the threshold, the crew set sail back to Gotham, which Bruce has apparently been away from for 20 years.
We're going home.
The lurker on the threshold is the stand-in for Cthulhu in this story, and basically serves the role that you would expect, a big monster hyped up until you see it at the end. I'm not sure if Cthulhu is in the public domain or not, because DC used Cthulhu in Justice League, though it was also under a slightly different name. The Waynes arrive back in Gotham and return to the manor. Soon after their return, however, the group discovers a man tied up and within an inch of his life, who is able to tell Bruce's name before he dies, Kirk Langstrom. Right after that, Bruce is visited by Jason Blood, who some of you nerds might know as Etrigan the Demon, a member of DC's more supernatural side, so he fits right in here. Jason warns Bruce of a doom coming to Gotham.
He said it! He said it!
He mutters a vague prophecy before turning into his demon form and leaving the house in a blaze. The words that he says to Bruce differ from the movie to the book, but the general consensus is that the sins of the father will go onto the son, Bruce must die and through death become the savior of Gotham, and that before he can save Gotham, it has to be burned.
Before it can be saved, Gotham must be burned to the ground.
Keep this in mind because it becomes very important towards the end. And after that scene, the group is invited to dinner at Oliver Queen's house. I like how Green Arrow is portrayed here. He comes off as this big game hunter type and honestly reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt. I like how the story uses the DC universe. There's no random mention of Superman or the Flash, only characters that feel appropriate with the tone and world and add to the story. Also joining the group for dinner is Harvey Dent, who's looking rather normal, for now at least, and he's even running for mayor, which is an interesting twist.
Harvey Dent.
Let's not count chickens, Ollie. Election's not for 4 days, and I'll be Bruce Wayne.
After that, we get our first scene with this version of Batman. I like the way the suit looks and the old-timey gadgets. They're obviously not as advanced as normal Batman's gear, but he seems to be just as efficient with them because that's the time period he lives in. It's things like this that feel similar to Gotham by Gaslight, but I still think this stands on its own. Batman investigates the lab of Kirk Langstrom, which leads him to a magic book called the Testament of Ghoul, the stand-in for the Necronomicon.
Boomstick!
And yes, Ghoul, spelt with a U, so I'm sure you can start putting the pieces together here. In his attempt to steal the book, Batman is stopped by Talia al Ghul and some fire demon thing, but thankfully Etrigan sacrifices himself to save him.
My sacrifice is made so you might end this, Gus. Alas, it'd be for naught should the book remain hers.
Then Batman gets knocked out and brought into the sewers by Killer Croc. With all of these villains popping up so frequently, it may come as a surprise that the Joker is completely absent here, but I think it's fine. Because unless he was like a cultist or something, I don't really think he would fit into this kind of story. As of right now, the book and the movie are basically the same, but it's later when you see where they really start to differentiate from one another. Back on the Wayne's boat, Killer Croc attacks Dick and Jason, killing them both and taking Mr. Freeze.
No!
I've got you. I know. Let it out. It's okay. Let it out.
Yeah, the story's pretty dark, which I like, and there's some definite shock value in killing off 2 Robins like that, even if they weren't around very long. It shows the backbone that the writing team had when they made this. For those of you who didn't know, the story was made by Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy, and you can definitely see how that vibe carries over, especially in the artwork. I think it's cool that they got a team specializing in the supernatural to work on this. Back to the story, Talia uses the Testament of Ghul to revive her father, Ra's al Ghul, who sends an army of reptiles to plague Gotham and take Batman away. As she does this in the comic, she explains her origins, tying them back to ancient snake people who lived in the desert, which feels pretty Lovecraftian to me. Afterward, Mr. Freeze is brought before Ra's, who has him killed to awaken the seed planted within him back in the Antarctic, which is revealed to be poison ivy? Then back in the city, Ivy approaches Harvey Dent, infecting him with some sort of virus.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
In between all of these scenes are nice conversations between Cassandra or Tim and Oliver. In his first scene, he comes off as a strong guy ready to take on anything and mounts it on his wall, but when he opens up, he reveals a more somber side to him. He's heard the same prophecy that Bruce did, but he took that to mean it has to be him himself to save Gotham. And that's why he traveled and hunted so much, to prepare himself to face the monsters.
I vowed to undo each of those sins. I set about preparing to face this impending doom he warned of, testing myself against deadly beasts, collecting all manner of holy weapons.
His last scene shows him gearing up and donning a suit of armor similar to his Green Arrow costume to fight whatever's coming, which turns out to be Poison Ivy.
Why, we were just talking about you.
Thank goodness. If I killed you that easily, there'd have been no sport.
He puts up a good fight, but in both versions, even though he kills her, he's mortally wounded, and he dies next to Batman, realizing that he is the hero meant to save Gotham.
I'm so sorry, Bruce, my father. He did what he did. You did nothing but live as a good man.
In the next scene, we see Harvey getting a checkup from a doctor about the infection Ivy gave him. Then, later at his house, we see him flipping his iconic coin, showing how the infection is spread, looking far more reminiscent of Two-Face as Talia comes to collect him for the final part of their plan. Back at Wayne Manor, Bruce holds a funeral for all of his fallen loved ones, and then, in the movie, gives a pretty good speech about how he's been struggling with all of the supernatural stuff. Throughout the whole story, he's been trying to convince himself that there's some scientific reasoning behind all of it, but Oliver's death was the last straw and he's finally ready to become the savior Gotham needs. In the comic, he seems to just be fine with all of this, which I think is fine because he is Batman after all, but I appreciate the movie giving him some more depth in this regard. After the speech, Batman gets a visit from Barbara Gordon, who begins the coolest part of the story in my opinion. It's revealed that the fathers of Bruce, Oliver, Kirk Langstrom, as well as the Professor Talia killed to get the book, were the ones who originally settled Gotham. Soon after, with the help of the Penguin, they discovered a ritual that would let them live forever and give good fortune to Gotham, which they then performed. And over the years, they watched Gotham grow into the city it is now, until they went mad. Langstrom took his own life, which explains what Bruce saw in his flashbacks. Cobblepot went crazy and was left in the Antarctic, as you saw in the beginning of the story. Queen went crazy and ended up being the one to kill the Waynes, which in part led to Oliver believing himself to be the savior. And Professor Manford ended up surviving until Talia killed him. I honestly think while the movie streamlined this backstory and made it look cooler, the comic did it better, because it not only did a way better job of making this feel like part of the prophecy, but also explained the origins of this version of Killer Croc, so it ties the whole story together very nicely. Approaching the third act, Batman finds the hideout of the cult and has one final showdown with Killer Croc. In the movie, he even melts him down with acid, which is pretty sick. He then finds a gate created by whatever is left of Harvey, and the two of them have one final talk as friends.
Bruce. Take care of yourself. Huh?
You're too hard.
Once he steps through the gates, Batman is met by monsters, which he quickly dispatches. I think this is done better in the movie because he has to fight monstrous versions of Jason, Dick, and Oliver, so in a way he's saying goodbye to the loved ones that he couldn't save.
Forgive me, boys.
Especially Oliver, who has some good last words for when Bruce finally sets him free.
Thank God. Kick their ass, Bruce.
In the final battle, Ra's al Ghul becomes a weird Cthulhu monster and nearly kills Batman as the lurker on the threshold comes through a portal. That is, until Bruce remembers the prophecy and this happens.
You're still alive? Not alive. Not anymore. What are you? I am.
The literal Batman beats the living daylights out of Ra's, but the lurker on the threshold is only getting closer, so Batman breaks the bottle containing Etrigan, who is imprisoned back at the laboratory. Etrigan congratulates the Bat on his work before telling him to leave as he proceeds to Tropic Thunder the lurker on the threshold.
That's my shit!
Batman flies away, leaving Harvey and most of Gotham to burn. Later, Tim gives a speech commemorating Bruce Wayne, who is contributing to the rebuilding of the city, but has withdrawn from the public due to injuries from the fire. Though he has promised to be there and help the people if they ever need him again. And the story ends with the Batman lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next time Gotham needs its savior. That's a pretty solid ending to the story, and felt pretty conclusive. I will say, I do prefer the comic version of the Batman, but the movie does its own thing, and that's fine. Moving on to the technical stuff regarding the film, the animation is just okay. I know the DC animated movies typically don't get the highest budgets, but I've looked pretty extensively and I can't find out how much money they got to make this. Now I know how to enjoy something with a lower budget, but here the animation just seems extra stiff in certain areas. It's not bad, but it's noticeable.
Spirits.
I feel a story like this would have benefited from a weird, unique art style, and there are some scenes where the animation does excel and the colors look nice, but sometimes it just looks like a Netflix original cartoon. Like I said, not bad, but could be better. The budget didn't seem to affect the voice cast though, because good lord, it is stacked in ways you would not expect. Normally in DC animated stuff, Batman would be voiced by Kevin Conroy or Troy Baker, but here he's voiced by Nick from Grimm, who does a good job, I'd say. This version of Batman isn't really used to fighting the supernatural and is very out of his element, and his voice acting helps sell that to the audience while still feeling enough like Batman.
The Testament. Now.
In terms of other actors, you have one of the kids from Jesse as Jason Todd, Max from the Goofy movie as Dick Grayson, Magneto from X-Men 97 playing Etrigan, and John DiMaggio is here playing Gordon, which is nice, he's a really accomplished guy. Jeffrey Combs, who played the Question in Justice League and Brainiac in Injustice 2, is here playing Man-Bat, but in flashback only. Thankfully, he gets a full monologue that shows off his range, and it's very reminiscent of his speech to Luthor in Justice League.
A is A. And no matter what reality he calls home, Luthor is Luthor.
Strangely, Howard Hamlin from Better Call Saul is playing Two-Face. Patrick Fabian, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't do much voice stuff. He's doing a decent job, but it's still kind of strange to see him here. But the biggest out-of-place choice in the movie, David Dastmalchian. The guy from Ant-Man, Polka Dot Man from Suicide Squad, and someone who starred in both Dunes, Oppenheimer, The Dark Knight, and so many others, plays Mr. Freeze for about 5 minutes of collective screen time. I don't think it's bad that all of these guys are here. Having celebrities in your movie is fine depending on how they're used, but I just find it interesting how they were casted. It's almost like audio-based cameos if you can recognize the voices. So when it comes down to it, which version of the Doom that came to Gotham is the best? Well, in my opinion, while the movie may do some things better, the comic is ultimately a more complete package, with a better art style and, for the most part, better character work. That's not to say that the movie is bad, because it's not. It's a fine animated superhero movie. But when it comes to telling this story in particular, the book takes the cake. And with that being said, thanks for watching today's video. I hope you liked the first episode in my comparison series. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more like it in the future, and I'll see you nerds later.
Tell me why it ain't nothing but a holiday. Tell me why it ain't nothing but a mistake. Tell me why I never wanna hear you say I want it that way.